I have 5:31.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the work session for the Village of Mount Sterling Council together for August 5th, 2026. Please have a roll call.
Okay. Nathan?
Here.
David?
Here.
Becky? Here. Melanie? Here. Heather?
Here.
And Joyce?
Here.
All's present?
Great. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to bring council up to speed, and the general public, of course, as to the rate study and the water loss control plan that was requested by council some time ago. Those have been completed and the results are in front of you. For the general public, we do have some handouts and they're in front of you over there. Extras will be posted in the lobby for those who can't make it for the meeting tonight. All of this is a public record and we'd be happy to give it to you in spades. One of the things that we won't be doing tonight is actually voting on anything. So I'm glad everyone's coming out to get informed as to what's going on in the village as it relates to water and sewer. And tonight we have as guests two outstanding presenters. One from the Rural Community Action Partnership and another one from EPA, correct?
No.
Oh, both of us.
Both of us are from RCAP. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That is
So,
all right.
thank you, sorry about that. And so the purpose tonight is to clarify two things that are going on in the village as it relates to water and sewer. The first one is to understand what ultimately the rates should be around the village billing. The second should be around the control of water loss, because every system has inherently to it some water loss. So the best are a certain percentage. We're going to hear a little bit more, and we're going to get into some of the more details here in just a second. So without further ado, would you like to take it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexis Lowe. I'm a Senior Rural Development Specialist for RCAP. RCAP is a nonprofit organization that stands for Rural Community Assistance Program under the Great Lakes region. Ben, after I present, we'll have a lovely map that shows the different regions of our organization. But for now, just know that we're a part of RCAP. Now, I have worked with different members of the village on creating this water loss control plan. This uses the American Water Works Association's free water audit software. And what I do is I compile all of the village's information, how much water it used, where it came from, how are the customer meters doing, etc. Anything I can get data-wise from the village, and I put it into this software. The software is an Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty complex and detailed, and then we take it and we create this lovely 16-ish page report that's called a water loss control plan. Now, in this plan, I have it up on the screen right now. I'm just going to go through some of the high-level summary elements of it today. I will not be reading all 16 pages out for you today, of course. So, first, this executive summary. Your public water system serves roughly 1,950 customers through 836 service connections within the distribution system. Your non-revenue water for the audit period, which is 2025, is calculated to be 60.6 million gallons, which the audit estimates costs the system about $109,000 a year. Now we're going to break that down even more. And I am going to skip ahead a little bit. Now this report will be sent to you tomorrow. And however you want to distribute copies, if you want to post it on your website,
Yep,
fantastic,
all of that.
however you want. So I'm going to skip right into the analysis portion. In 2025, your community produced 94.321 million gallons of water. And for your non-revenue water, that was 60.6 million gallons. So that means your non-revenue water percentage was 64.289% in 2025. Now the system uses different data validity scoring to make sure that that percentage is accurate, which I will be going into in just a moment. But we have this lovely graphic here that shows how that breaks down. So first, your non-revenue water is that 60.638 million gallons in 2025. And then it goes into water loss, which the difference between water loss and non-revenue water is unbilled authorized consumption. You won't be able to change that That's, for example, what this building uses. That's unbilled authorized consumption, and that's all right. Every community has that. So what we really should be focusing on today is that real water loss and the apparent losses. Real loss is leaks occurring within your system, where the water actually spills out in your system somewhere, whether that be tank overflows or leaks, in your main lines, service lines, etc. Apparent loss is where water made it to an end user, but the system did not collect revenue from that used water, whether that be from billing software errors, data handling errors, water theft, things of that nature. So the system calculated, based on the inputs we gave it, that for apparent losses, you had 862,000 gallons lost that way, but the majority of your water loss was due to real losses, so out of leaks, and that's 59.3 million gallons of water in 2025. Now I'm going to continue, and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Okay, I hope everyone can see that all right, but I'll be saying some of it out loud for if you cannot see it. So let me see if I can zoom in any farther. There we go. Okay. This is the water balance worksheet. It's a lovely breakdown of where your water started, which is volume from own sources on the left side, which is that 94.5 million gallons of water. And then it breaks it down into where that water went, including how much you supplied to your system, and then your water losses. So your authorized consumption, which is what made it to the customers that the customers used, was 34.369 million gallons in 2025. And the other portion was that water loss at 60.188 million gallons of water. And then it breaks it down, as I've already said, into apparent losses and real losses. And it goes even farther. It shows you how those real losses and the apparent losses break down. Now to continue, let me zoom back out here again a little bit. There we are. I like pointing this bar chart out here. It breaks down how much your non-revenue water cost in 2025, which was about $110,000, and the total volume of that non-revenue water at 61 million gallons into the real losses. So that blue part of the chart, that's real losses. And then the bottom part is apparent losses. So the majority of the lost water in your system is due to real loss. So I'm going to focus on that for the strategies for improvement. And it breaks it down even farther into apparent losses cost about a little under $6,000. Real loss was $103,000 for the year. Real loss is calculated using the variable production cost of water. That's going to be your electricity and chemicals. Now, apparent losses, that's calculated using your rate structure, your rate ordinance, how much the water, how much the customers pay for their water. So they are calculated differently because you would have received that revenue from the apparent losses, while real losses, even if you fix those leaks, you still wouldn't receive any revenue from that lost water. Okay, going forward, the free water audit software does create these gauges for you. I just want to say, please don't focus on these gauges when you look at this report later. These gauges compare you to other verified completed water audits in other systems. This includes big cities, such as maybe Columbus, Ohio. I do not think you should compare yourself as a small rural system to a large city. So I would not look at what percentile you fall in. Instead, I include this in the report to show you the cost. It breaks it down by connection per year. So that's $130 of the total loss cost rate per connection per year. And it breaks it down even farther. I'm going to skip ahead though for sake of time. And now we're going into the strategies to improve your validity score. This is your data validity score. The free water audit software is urging communities to push away from just focusing solely on water loss percentage, which was about 60% for your community, and instead wants you to focus more on your data validity score, which means how well can we trust the source of your data and the accuracy of it? That includes, is your master meter calibrated? Do you have a GIS system that you update regularly, etc.? So you scored a 71 out of 100. That is actually the highest I have personally seen out of the rural villages I have helped. It's a pretty good score, especially for your first water audit, which we serve as a baseline for improvement. The goal is simply to improve every time you complete a water audit. So you landed in tier 4 out of 5. And the free water audit software based on that gives you strategies for improvement. And we take those strategies and we elaborate on them in this water loss control plan. So moving forward, excuse me. I am skipping a few pages here. I'm going to go right to the conclusion and recommendations. So based on what I've talked to your village about and the results of this water audit, I would say, in order, the community should focus on leak detection primarily, since most of your water loss is due to real loss, so leaks in your system. Leak detection should be a priority upcoming. There are different methods of leak detection, including acoustic leak detection. You can do it during normal operating, such as hydrant flushing and valve exercising. Put an ear down, listen, see if you hear any water. And there's also more fancy methods, such as district metered areas. That's where you put you split your community up into different zones, and you put flow meters right at the start of each zone. So then, if your community can be broken down like that, and then you can monitor the amount of usage per zone, and it'll help you figure out where the leaks are occurring within your system.
So can I just add something?
Of course,
just as far
yes.
as what leak detection, so that everybody here understands that?
Of course.
It's not a visible leak that you're going to see that is above water.
Right.
So
Yes.
that's the whole purpose of when she refers to leak detection. It is not the water that's sitting on top of a sidewalk or in a yard. This is something that's in ground that it's not being found. So you're not
Yes.
visibly able to see it.
Yes.
This is why some of these techniques, will cost the village to determine where it's at.
Yes. I wish it were as simple as walking around on foot around the village and finding all of those leaks, but most of the water leaks, honestly, I could even probably say all of your water leaks within your system are underground ones. They're leaking into the ground somewhere or into another pipe. Maybe it could be a sewer I&I issue, something like that. But the only way you're going to find them by this point is to do a leak detection plan and listen in the ground for where those leaks are occurring.
So in the last 5 years, the village has implemented basically a zero tolerance policy around line breaks. So we don't let line breaks run. So if we find a line break, it gets fixed pretty much like when we can literally go out and do it. So there is no, like in Columbus, for example, they put a sign out and they will say, we will fix this in 3 weeks, right? And then
yeah.
the potable water is running down the sewer, into a storm sewer for 3 weeks. And so we don't do that here. So for the last 5 years, we have ratcheted down our leak response. So if there is a lateral or if there's a main trunk line, something like that, we try to get on it almost immediately.
That's amazing. That's a great way to do it. I believe after talking with Courtney that it appears that most of your leaks are ones that it's not your fault for not having to have found it yet. It seems like these are going to be a little bit trickier to find, which is why I suggested going farther than the typical listen during hydrant flushing suggestion, because I know Feynman from RCAP also
Yep.
came out and did that, found, I believe, 6 or so leaks from hydrants.
Yeah.
But I believe because of how high your real water loss percentage is, you might want to go out and do more complex leak detection methodologies.
I think that's probably true. And, I used to think it was as simple as going out in the middle of summer and looking for a really green lawn. And, it's not as simple as that. So
But it could have festered too. So
it could have, yeah.
Absolutely.
Underground, it could have been leaking for months until it started to find its lesser of strength to come up through a crack like down the street.
Right.
Absolutely.
So some of those instances, and you don't have a meter that you could meter how fast the flow is going or how much you think that you're losing.
Yes.
So in some of these breaks, you really don't know what the cost or the volume could.
Ultimately, the
typically be-
volume. The volume is the issue. You're exactly right.
Absolutely. And based off of the research the American Waterworks Association has done, they determined that service line leaks are the majority over water main leaks.
Yeah.
So they're
We,
even
we would
harder
tend to, we
find.
would tend to agree with that because our mains
Absolutely.
fracture in the winter and
Yes.
the other service lines are done when people are active, right? So they're out mowing or they're doing something in their yard, they're digging stuff up, and we will have service line leaks.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Now, the next suggestion was water line replacement, at least investigating completing a water line replacement project in the future. Now, Ben has added that to your capital improvement plan for the early 2030s. If at all possible, this should be at least investigated and potentially start to budget for it to be implemented sooner than that.
For the public's benefit, our last major water line upgrade was on North High Street, and that was, what,
Well, London
50?
Street was the last major
Well,
one.
but we borrowed money for North
Yeah.
High Street in 2014, I think, something along those lines. And then, as you said, on London, we did do a water main replacement that goes down to the service garage, and that was relatively more recent. But the rest of the village hasn't, other than that, seen a major service line, trunk line upgrade since the 80s. So before that, it was the 1940s. And before that, obviously, it was when the system was built. So we, yeah, so so just to give the public a taste of what we're really talking about here.
Got it. Thank you for elaborating. Yes. Then after that, we always recommend a master meter validation. That is simply just making sure that the master meter is the correct type for the flow you have, and for your pipe structure around that master meter, making sure that it's calibrated, and ultimately this will lead to an improved source of data and accurately tracking that first source of your water usage amount.
And it gets calibrated, just so the public knows, every 6 months, so.
Yes.
You know, it'd be more of like a service that I think, Alexis, you and I talked about, is
Yes.
having somebody from RCAP come in and actually do that.
Yes.
Something that,
We would just validate that the master meter is correctly installed and just properly placed and is reading accurately. Yep. And then, because the software put you at a very high tier for your data validity score, I also put in that they want you to focus on future benchmarking, proactive meter testing, things like that. Now, for a rural system like this, proactively testing customer meters is pretty expensive and sometimes is not worth the hassle of it, but if possible in the future, this is looking like not right now, at least in the 2030s on era, start looking into proactively testing about 2% to 5% of the customer meters every year,
Okay.
especially since your meters are new. I know that your system has new meters, which is fantastic, but as they age, they start to wear down and read less, typically less than what is being used.
Yeah, so for the public's benefit, we made a big push about 5 years ago to replace water meters because, as everybody knows, the old ones got stuck and they would never read right, or they'd read fast, or they'd read slow. And so about 5 years ago, we started replacing meters with radio reads and with cellular meters and all the newer builds. So we can read them with a wand and we can read them from cellular so that we know that they're actually returning. And when they don't return, we say, aha, something's going on here with what's being reported. So either someone's not paying or someone's overpaying, and we can figure out what's going on with that.
Absolutely, yes.
So that was done with, you said, only new builds?
No, that was done 5 years ago with ARPA money. We replaced a whole bunch of regular water meters and everyone's throughout the village, and then we decided to upgrade to cellular meters in new builds.
well, part of that's true. So the real answer is during COVID, so the members that were here in COVID 2020, we got money to buy meters.
That was
And those
yeah,
were all
ARPA money, but yeah.
those were all for cellular meters. So we only have about 5 or 6 that's left that are still on the old
No,
platform.
radio reads,
That
okay.
are through Badger, that, you manually have to pick up, look inside of the hole. So we only have 5 or 6 of those residents that still have those meters. The rest of them are on cellular. So if a resident comes in and say they have a high water bill, Misty can pull it up into her software and say, okay, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., it looks like you had, generated 50 million gallons of water. So it's most sophisticated that way because, again, when the new administration came in here, there were people that were not paying, there were people that did not have valid meters, they were not calibrated, they were broken. You know, I'm sure some residents probably have gotten phone calls from Misty at some point to come and change meters. So we only have about, from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 5 or 6 of
Yep.
them that still need to be
Swapped out.
swapped out at residences' homes. So we also did, just also for the public's knowledge, in case you don't follow some of these public meetings, I had taken upon myself to figure out what this water loss was because it is an EPA violation. So I want everybody to be very clear about that. This is an EPA violation. Technically, in EPA, they do require a system to only have 30% of water loss. As Alexis has stated, we have 60% of water loss. In order to keep funding down, we were under financial emergency, as most of you have known. So we did not have the means of going and hiring, as they suggest, you know, people to look at meters and people to come out and do calibrations and people to do leak detections. That does cost money. So I had taken upon myself to do a visual water audit myself. And that would be going house to house to house to house. So you would go to 1 South London, 2 South London, 3 South London. The guys did that, our village employees did that, brought it back to Misty's office, and she plugged in 1 South London, 2 South London, just to confirm that every single person that was living there physically was getting billed for that. So that was one technique that we used before we, you know, started doing the, you know, we had money to do with the HARPA funds, because COVID money allowed you to have meters because they didn't want you to come inside of people's houses or go near them. So what a better time to spend that money is to spend it on meters so that you could detect where this water loss was at.
And we also started putting meters on places that weren't traditionally
Correct.
metered.
Yes.
So town hall, for example, our sewer plant, for example, you know, any place where we could spot a potential source of water loss, we started tracking it.
So that's what was presented to council this past
Right.
budget season, is to get meters installed on the major facilities. So even though it's not financially, you know, like paid,
Needed.
it is tracked that you could get the data to you and you could see that historical data to say, okay, this is how much is using, to put something to that. The fire department, they'd never had to track anything until I've asked them to track. So when they fill up their tankers, you know, I keep saying previous administration didn't really care where that water was going, right? So guess what? You know, me and the chief have every single month, he sends me a record of, okay, we fought this fire, this is how many times we filled up our, you know, tanker, this is how much we used. And there were municipalities that were not being charged. There absolutely were. And now they are. So there's been a lot sort of working on this type of project for some time.
Yep.
And now I think every free option has been exhausted. And now we need to get to what the EPA is requiring us to get.
Right.
Absolutely, yes. It seems as though the current administration, you all are doing a great job in this village updating the meters and making sure that your data validity, so the source of your data, is good. That's why your score for this water audit, the actual data validity score, was high. It's the highest I have personally seen for a village.
Proud
I
of
mean,
it.
we absolutely should be proud of that. I think now it's about tackling that real water loss now. And finding it specifically. Because as you said, it's not above the ground where those leaks are occurring. It's in the ground. And it seems like potentially, as soon as you can, putting some funding, budgeting for a leak detection program to be
Yeah,
implemented
we agree.
would be great.
We agree. It's time. We're down to the end.
Absolutely. Great. Do you have any questions for me before I turn this over to Ben?
On your improvement plan for the 2030s, is that what your prediction for is for the future, what we're going to have to do eventually?
Yes. Yes. So Ben can speak to this more as he comes up, but we create a capital improvement plan for the village based off of what projects need to be completed upcoming within usually about the next 10 years or so. And water line replacement was one that we put on there for you just because of your aging infrastructure. Yes.
Because there hasn't been a major water line
No.
replacement.
No,
There
we
hasn't
haven't.
been.
Mm-mm.
Yes. Any other questions? Great. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Alexis. We appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Just give us a moment. He's going to pop up a.
Gonna swap
spreadsheet
out
as well.
here.
Council, you do have in front of you, also for the public's knowledge as well, there are packets, high-level packets.
Yeah, so if anybody wants handouts or whatever, they're right there. Plus, we'll leave some in the lobby if you want to pick them up later. No problem.
Without chairs, want chairs, you can grab.
Also, the city of, we're handing out also a rate study done by the city of Piqua, so not RCAP. It's a supplementary study. You can see sort of where approximately 71 municipalities that are immediately around us, or around Piqua rather, in about an 80-mile radius where they land, and that's all available for you too. So take a look at that if you have a chance. And Ben, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Ben Howard with RCAP. Thanks for having us tonight. I'm just going to kind of do a whirlwind tour, crash course on utility rate setting, just have some slides explaining the methodology, and then we'll dive into the specific numbers for the village of Mount Sterling. So, as Alexis alluded to, we're part of this national nonprofit here in the Great Lakes region. With our rates, something you'll hear Ohio EPA and you'll hear us talk about often is this idea of TM&F, technical, managerial, and financial capabilities. At the end of the day, technical is that kind of operational competency, having the people with the know-how, your operator, your staff, having the skills necessary to get the job done. Managerial is that kind of communication between your day-to-day staff and your governing board, and so that organizational accountability. And then lastly, financial is that resource management. And so rate setting, that's largely what we're focused on here tonight. And so if we have all of our ducks in a row there with TM&F, that allows us to have that reliable, safe, affordable water. So how do we accomplish that? We've got these 4 hows of financial capability there at the top. How do we achieve that? It's through fiscal management and control, revenue sufficiency, and credit worthiness. How do we achieve fiscal management and control? That's through that good record keeping, having a game plan of a capital improvement plan, an asset management plan, and then organizing your expenses and revenues, of course, into your annual budget. How do we achieve revenue sufficiency? That's by having a rate structure that is fair and effective. How do we achieve credit worthiness? That's through accessing funding sources such as Ohio Water Development Authority, Ohio EPA, USDA, and those public lenders and grant opportunities. And that's a service that RCAP offers to small communities at no cost. And so we're happy to discuss that with you further after tonight. And that definitely is definitely one of my recommendations for us to try to bring forward those water main replacements as they're discovered to be needed. So. And then how do we achieve that? It all gets tied together in this financial forecast. So another way you can think, we've got the goal, the strategies, the tactics, and the tool. So this tool is what we use to make this rate study. We collect 5 years of data. Your staff, Misty and Courtney, helped me gather this. And so in the last 5 years, in this example, it's showing just 3 years. There are those green columns on the left. And so I'll look at trends for...
Can you make that any bigger? Like,
Yes, let's see. Yep. This is just the methodology, so these are not your numbers. But
okay.
so just to explain, yeah, you got your customer count, looking at the usage, looking at how much water was produced, and then looking at your rate schedule, and then looking at the accounting records for how many dollars and cents were brought in, how much was going out. And so with each of those categories, I look at the trend of the last 5 years. Has it been going up or down? Or should I take an average if it's fluctuating? And once I notice the trend, I make a note of it and define a typical year. That typical year I'm then able to use to project into the future, and then I will set the rates to cover those anticipated expenses that are being projected into the future. Within your expenses, Some expenses, of course, are fixed and are going to be the same no matter how much water people end up using. So things like insurance, salaries, mortgages, debt service, things like that. And then you have other cost categories such as electricity, chlorine, things that are variable costs that vary in direct proportion to how much water is used. And so I tried to characterize your different line item expenses from your accounting software to allocate those costs as fixed or variable, and then I will set the rates to try to cover those appropriately. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the purple columns. That's that projection into the future. Any questions on the method?
Do we have this, or?
I
okay.
can provide you a copy of these slides, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great. So to dig into some of the significance of this, again, this is example data, not specific to your system. At the bottom of that financial projection, I will total your expenses for a typical year, your fixed, your variable. And we'll start to understand, okay, in this example, there's about 5,400 customers. Fixed costs, if we were to have all the customers cover the fixed cost before a single drop of water is delivered to them, in this example, they would each pay $44.86 to cover that readiness to serve, having the infrastructure in place, ready to deliver water 24/7 to each of the customer connections doors. After that, the variable cost is, in this example, it was $1.40 per 1,000 gallons. And so we can combine those to see what the theoretical minimum bill is or average bill is. And so these are benchmarks that, model reality imperfectly, but it helps us have an understanding more or less what is, where our costs shake out. So we pulled from a lot of different data sources. Hopefully, with your council going through that rate study in the past, going through this one with us, we're getting reps in. We're getting familiar with talking through these different points of concern. And so we were looking at things such as your last sanitary survey, the last time Ohio EPA visited your plant. Looked at, lender requirements, your accounting statements, looking at the census, how's population changed, any reports from your clerk or operator. And so learning to know where to look in a lot of ways is half the battle. And then we synthesized all that data. So those are your inputs. Rate setting is your strongest tool based on those inputs to achieve affordable, reliable water. And so that is through having those game plans, understanding all the assets involved in providing water, having a capital improvement plan, and that annual budget. So that's the methods. And then we can get into the particulars of the Village of Mount Sterling, unless there are any questions at this point.
You was talking about that 4481, which goes back to about the 50s when the water bills about that time period. And so basically, that adds up from there technically?
I'm sorry?
Does that add up from technically, from the 4481, does that add up?
That was a sample. That was just
That was-
a, for instance,
It's
that was
not
a,
the village.
it's not the village. That was just a sample. Yep.
So
Good
let's-
question.
Yeah, good question. So let's dive into the village specifics here. Okay. And I will try to do this on the screen, but at this point, I will be referencing the printed sheet. This is
Yeah,
really
so
what
if
we're gonna
anybody
be
wants an
going through
extra,
right
we
now.
got some extras floating around here. Oh, please, whatever you got. I'll take whatever. Okay, there we go.
No, you're good. I can read it off here.
Well, here, you and I can share.
Let me just separate these so we can focus on one thing at a time here. Let's zoom in a little bit more. And okay. So here you can see the recommended rate schedule. you have different rates for your residential inside customers, your residential outside, and your commercial customers, as well as your industrial customer class. In the left-hand side there, 2026, in the gray column, you can see what your current rate schedule is. And then to the right, I show the next 5 years in blue of the recommended rates. Beneath that, you can see in the area called affordability, I'll zoom out a little bit, what the impact is of these recommendations. So, based on the consumption data that I received, your average customer uses 2,859 gallons. Your base bill includes an allowance of 1,000 gallons. And so in this year, with your rate schedule, your average customer is paying $73.14 per month. According to census data, the local median household income, so half your residents make more than this, half make less, is $72,692. $72,692. The state is just below that at 71,000, and the country is higher than that at 80,000. So here locally, that average bill, let me correct myself. Next year, after the rate recommendation, the bill will go up to $83.42. Next year, that will equate into the red text you see there to 1.38% of the median household income. That is a typical affordability benchmark that the lenders, the funders that I mentioned earlier will look at. How much is your typical household in the community having to spend on their water bill? And so this is saying it's going to be 1.38%. With the funders, anything up to about 2% is often considered affordable. At 2%, that's when lenders and grant makers such as USDA start to offer grant money. Before 2%, they take the position that you haven't exhausted your ability to pay yet to participate in covering these costs. And so we want to see you increase rates before we're going to offer grant funds.
So I would, if I may interject for just a second, the village over the last 3 years has pursued every grant opportunity we possibly get, including the water tower, which was more than 2/3 paid for by grant money. We also have $470,000 in a sewer project on Spring Street, which is also paid for entirely by grant money. So there has been a lot of grant money here, and I agree with you, there can be more, and we need to go down that path. The water tower alone was $2.3 million. So of which, a very sizable chunk was paid for by grant money. So yeah, there's opportunity here.
There definitely is. I fully agree. And some of the other lenders and funders, Ohio Water Development Authority, Ohio EPA, they have more readily accessible grant funding, in my opinion. I've had a lot of communities have more success securing those, particularly if they have similar income numbers to Mount Sterling. So happy to discuss that
Thank you.
further. Yes.
I have a question about that, the $73.
Yes.
Does that take into account the $50 a month debt service that every customer pays?
So Courtney and I were talking about that today, and so when we had discussed that, the minimum bill there, what I had understood, and correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, is that the $50 debt service fee is split between both water and sewer. So some portion of the $50 you're referring to is within that minimum bill of $55.90.
Okay, so that rate would just be the water portion of the bill, not the sewer portion of the bill.
Right.
Correct. I'm not discussing sewer at all today. Yep, just drinking water today.
Okay.
So, and then you can see after the 5 years of recommendations, you can see it kind of stair step up the increase for each of those years. And in 2031, the average bill is projected to be $107.36, which will be 1.77% of median household income. That is if median household income remains where it is. And hopefully, as the community has seen in the last 10 years, local incomes have grown. So hopefully that trend continues and it will be a smaller share of each home's.
And that's to say if the,
One of the key things, though, you got a lot of senior citizens that are on fixed incomes. I'd say about a third of the people are on fixed incomes. So, you know, but this is what it probably would be for them, right? It
well, this would be for residential, commercial, industrial,
Yeah,
what that would be.
Yeah, there are different rates for different folks,
But, I
so
mean,
we're not.
What he's
yeah.
saying is that, you know, in these years prior to like the next 5 years, it's expected that growth will happen in the village, right? People will get raises, people will get different jobs to make more money. That's what he's saying at this point, is that that's the expectation that that's gonna happen.
So hopefully it'll be less than 1.77.
Yeah.
And I guess to your point, for those who are of retirement age and either making their money from investments, hopefully their investments perform well. If they are low income and they're relying on public support, hopefully the cost of living adjustment will help keep
Okay.
up with those
I
changes.
just
as they-
curious.
And just remember, like, I think I've said this before when I've applied for grants. Certain grants you can apply for to moderate to income household, and do people know what that means? So currently the village is low to moderate income. Okay, that's what we are
We're
classified
about
as.
60% low to moderate
Yeah.
income.
So what happens is the more that you grow, you get out of that belt. You don't become low to its moderate income. So once you start to grow, your income base becomes higher, which means that
Basically, then,
it's
Courtney,
harder for you to
the new
get those
housing
grants.
project would help then, right?
It would help both income
Okay.
and water,
I just
Yeah.
wondered.
because you would
So-
grab income tax and then you would grab water usage.
Thank you.
So the section beneath that, titled Socioeconomics, and so in the left-hand corner, upper left-hand corner, I show a chart that says affordability at state minimum wage in 2026. It's a little hard just, this,
Okay.
and
So for everybody,
it's
it's
a little hard
down,
to see.
down in the corner, down in the corner.
The brownish.
Yeah, that little box there, yeah.
And so one metric to look at in regards of affordability is research scholars say one way to think about it is somebody should be able to afford 1 month's worth of utility service by only having to work 1 day a month.
Ben, I'm getting an anonymous phone number on my text. Can you speak a little bit into the microphone?
Yeah, or you
The
can,
public
you can
can't.
move the microphone
Yeah.
towards you a little bit too. Thank you.
And if everybody can, they're saying that there are certain people, especially me, that's talking a lot. I am not being heard.
What? No way.
Well, I'm currently deaf in my ear because
Yes.
of my ear infection.
Give her some credit. She's got a
So if you
bum,
can
she's
speak
got a bum
into
ear.
it,
Go ahead.
they just
Thank you,
can't
Ben.
hear.
Sorry.
Okay.
Go
Sorry
ahead.
about
You're fine.
that.
You're fine.
Yeah.
So that chart there is showing that at the state minimum wage of $11 an hour currently, for a resident living in Mount Sterling, they would have to work 6.65 hours to afford the average water bill. That is less than 1 day's work at 8 hours in that day. So by that measure, it is arguably affordable. I'm sorry?
That's just the water portion,
Mhm.
not the sewer.
Correct.
We pay the bill combined.
I'm sorry?
The bills combined, like.
Yep, and I'm happy to do the sewer analysis and discuss that another time, but it's,
Strictly water at this point.
yeah, it's too hard to do it all at once, and the decision-making has to be for each utility on its own, although affordability is impacted by both, of course, right? In the chart beneath that, I show local income growth has outpaced, so the red bar there, you can see it's grown significantly over the last 10 years, at least according to the census. So local incomes have grown significantly, faster than the state, faster than the country, and faster than inflation. So that's a very positive trend. The not so positive trend is in the upper right-hand corner about population growth. It's been very flat, less than 1%. So without population growth, you have the same amount, luckily it hasn't declined, but roughly the same amount of customers having to share the cost for this aging infrastructure. When you have population growth, you get that nice benefit of having additional payers to defray the cost. A positive trend is the bottom right-hand corner, showing that the local population is becoming more youthful, suggesting that there are young families moving into Mount Sterling. And so the average age here has gone from 35.8 years to 35, which is in contrast to the state and to the country, which have gotten older over the last 10 years. So the optimistic outlook would be you have young families moving in. Hopefully, as they progress in their careers and jobs, their incomes will grow as well. So any questions or comments on the socioeconomic portion there? Okay. Moving on to the next page. Looking at flows here, you can see in the last 5 years that the amount of water produced has fluctuated between roughly 80 million gallons up to 97 million gallons. The amount of billed water hasn't fluctuated quite as much. It's been between 41 million and 35 million. And so you can see those little dips and climbs for the amount of water that's non-revenue. Nonetheless, it's stayed pretty close to that 60% that Alexis went into great detail about already. So I just make the same note here, reiterating we're treating an excessive amount of water. Non-revenue water has regularly been 45 to 60 million gallons a year. And I'll just hop down to the last sentence there. It says, if we assume that given our 60%, 64% non-revenue water rate currently, that's our starting point. If we were to aim for getting that down to 40%, then current operations, if we get it down, we would save $45,000 a year by not having to treat that unnecessary water. And that could be going towards capital improvements.
Yeah, for council's benefit, we'll be spending money to get there.
Yes.
Just so everyone has a baseline expectation. We're now at a place where, as Courtney has said, all the easy stuff and low-hanging fruit has been exhausted. So from here, we're going to have to spend, and this is for you for budget season coming up here, we'll have to spend money in order to get here. And in the last water meeting, I mentioned that break fix was a significant issue, and this falls within that category.
So, I'm sorry. So in the next section, titled Capacity, I'm looking at what your average daily water demand is. So you produce just over 250,000 gallons a day, and the design capacity is just shy of 1 million gallons per day. And so it seems like you have plenty of capacity. You haven't seen much growth, as we talked earlier about socioeconomics. It seems like there were some of the historical context I had heard is there had been anticipated growth that would have helped pay for this larger plant, and that didn't materialize. And so that results into those anticipated costs being borne by the smaller existing customer base.
That's exactly right. And I'll talk about the elephant in the room as well, which is that Showa is leaving. So Molly Bear is leaving. There is no more Molly Bear. It's gone. It will be done by the end of this month, and I I am crushed personally by the people who've been affected by that. At one point, we had 800 employees who were working there, and now, as of the start of this year, there were about 140, and now there are 0. I don't, their issue is one aspect about this that hurts maybe the most, but another aspect is Molly Bear was a pretty significant water user for a very large number of years. When it was Showa, then K and Thermal, and then Molly Bear, they used a lot of water, except for within the last 4 years, perhaps, they started tapering down the amount of water and the amount of, and recycling it and doing other things with it. And so we saw a pretty significant amount of reduction there. That was offset to a small extent by the fact we built a new housing subdivision and people moved in and they were using water. But I won't kid you. You know, I said in a mayoral statement earlier this year that the loss of Molly Bear is going to be a pretty significant hit to the community, whether it's income tax, water usage, or anything else. And this is exactly where some of this is coming in. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, they just said Molly officially closed today.
Yes, Molly is closed. Yeah.
And the council from years ago, they thought we was going to expand. That's why that water plant was so big. Just like you explained, and everybody had great hopes, and them hopes didn't happen, so we got stuck with a big water plant.
Exactly.
But remember, there was always a story before that, so people that are, like to know history. When that was proposed, when the Molly KN at the time was proposed, it was not, how do I want to say, negotiated correctly. So there was not, Molly didn't get a certain percentage to say, okay, in order for us to run the water lines out there and build you a water tower, you have to provide X amount of dollars back to us. There was nothing like that was ever offered. So I think the negotiation up front of how, I think the eagerness of maybe the village wanting to have it at the time, there was no negotiation of, okay, you got to pay X amount of money to, you know, do capital improvements within the village or to you. So the village at that point ate everything that they ever needed to have happen out there. They never got any additional monies for a big industry like that. I mean, they got a tax break is what they got. They got an enterprise zone agreement, which has since then dissipated because the people can't, you know, there was an agreement and they didn't meet it a couple years ago, so there was no tax break for that.
Yeah, there's no tax break for it anymore, so.
Thank you for the context. So the chart there to the right of capacity there is just showing the change in precipitation or rainfall. And so the 0 point in the middle is the average from the last 30 years for each month. So you can see for January at the very top there, this last year, Mount Sterling received 1.6 inches less than they had on average for the last 30 years. And it goes down month by month. And so that's important in terms of groundwater, recharge, and your wells. On the whole, so there are some months that are significantly drier, particularly August and September here. August receiving less than 2 inches, more than 2 inches fewer worth of rain in August. But on the whole, for the year, you're receiving more rainfall. So now we're getting into the, I guess, the home stretch and the last discussion of the financials here. So let me.
Can I stop you? We're at
Yes.
the top of the hour and I don't want to interrupt anymore. Can we have an extension to allow this to finish? A motion to,
Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, David.
all in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So here, financials for the last 5 years, you can see that we were in the green or in the black there, positive 5 years ago up to 3 years ago, and then the last 2 years we were in the red. We brought in less money than it cost us to provide water. We almost broke even last year, so just shy. Beneath that is a chart called a Sankey chart. This is a mass balance. It's read from left to right. I'll zoom in. Whoops. And so you can see, as far as the revenues go, you have your different customer classes and the base bill providing the vast majority of revenues, and then the usage, the volumetric, providing the difference there. Based on how your rates currently are set and the trends I was seeing, I tried to make a typical cash flow for this year. And so if we were to leave things unchanged, I'm showing that it suggests there would be a loss again this year. So here on the expenses side, you can see those fixed and variable costs that I mentioned earlier. You can see like debt service, personal services like salaries, contractual, operating supplies down here, and variable, electricity, and other variable. And so on an average basis, it costs the village $6.33 per 1,000 gallons on a variable cost basis. I do want to highlight that note there. This includes non-revenue water. In other words, since nobody is paying for the non-revenue water, everybody is paying for the non-revenue water. And it must be, that cost must be spread out over the actually billed volumes. So that's including that. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. Here's,
No, excuse me, now, does that allow for inflation though? How, like our inflation just keeps going up?
it does.
Yeah, what's that, would you allow for that there?
So in my projections into the future, I did assume 3.5% inflationary expense inflation.
Okay. I just-
Yeah.
Can you explain to me again, here on the right, you have personal services, the 55,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have contractual services. What's the personal services?
I would assume that those are
Misty and Mary.
salaries, and it's
Misty and Mary. The contractual, because we contract with Mid-Ohio.
So the contractual is what we pay Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, well, this is a conference of like contractual. If they have like a pump that's down at the water plant, we would hire somebody to do the pump. That also is included in the contractual
And
services.
the personal services is just Misty and Mary's
Yes.
salaries?
Mhm.
And that is to be completely included in the water analysis? I mean, we don't
But we're
spread
only
that
doing
out.
water.
We're only doing
so
water.
Yeah, so.
But I mean, that's their whole salary
Yes.
is in
With
that.
benefits
It's not
and
spread out,
Yes.
everything
Mhm.
included.
Yes.
so it's not taken into account in any other fund. It's
No,
just all
just
out
the
of
water.
water.
Yep.
Okay.
And what's the other fixed? Would that be,
Yeah, what's the other fixed in there? That 29,000.
29,000. All right, we can dive into it. Let's see here.
So like utility, because we do have a fixed rate, but it's only based upon the amount of usage that you have.
All right, I'll zoom in. We'll have to, I'll try not to get us motion sick here. Let's see. So here on the left hand, you can see these are the line item expenses from your accounting software. So personal services, OPERS, Medicare, medical, workers' comp, employee reimbursement, uniforms. And so for each of those line item expenses here, I characterized some of those here. You can see like the Medicare, Medicaid, I categorize those as 100% fixed.
Because those are OPERS. So like, again, how the ordinance states is that, Misty has a salary base, a percentage. Every year it goes up based upon the cost of living, correct? So you take the cost of living, increase, so she would have obviously a raise, an increase in pay, which means OPERS would go up, that's 14%. 1.45 is Medicare, and then she also takes medical insurance.
Can you scoot back over to like those expenses so we
Mhm.
could see those again?
Yes.
So like uniform and clothing there, I see $343 is very minimal, but Misty nor
That's why
Mary
it's zero.
get that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
That's
it's
why it's
zero.
I zeroed that
Oh.
out going into the future, yep.
Okay, I just see it's 340, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So back then they did.
Because
Okay.
here today you don't get that phone allowance, but they
Right.
never got a uniform allowance
Right.
either,
That just says, yeah, uniform and clothing. Telephone's down below.
as a zero.
Okay, So the numbers that they're getting now are way over here?
Correct.
Okay.
Because again, this is from 4 you have?
Yeah, I-
23, 22, 21? You took it as a
Yeah, so the
historical?
columns there,
Okay.
I go back to 2019 up to 2025
Okay.
for the historical data, and then I project it.
So, I guess I'm confused. Are we saying this is the personal expenses, or is this the
Personal
other,
services.
what's the other fixed?
Yeah, so it's OPERS, Medicare, medical, workers' comp.
Okay,
A
so-
lot of these smaller items I had to lump in because it would have been too chaotic if
So
I.
that's just like,
Part of the other.
it's basically,
of their
it
personal
goes together
services.
with like what we're paying them because we're paying
Yes,
employees.
yes, yeah, yep.
So they're kind of lumped together, basically, but not.
Yeah, it's, they are minor fixed costs that I lumped together, whereas the personal services is a larger line item coded
Which
expense,
is
so I
more
wanted.
just kind of like their salary, without the benefits.
Yes, yes.
So their salary is the one and the other.
Fringe
is just
benefits and.
The benefits. Okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay. So, we're in the home stretch here. Let's see, where was I? One pager. Okay. All right. So now asset management. This is a kind of buzzword in some cases, but it is a very important topic. This is something that Ohio EPA began requiring in 2018. It's the idea that we want to use the assets that we have to deliver service at the lowest cost possible over the entire life cycle. So not the cheapest next year or, in 2 years, but, over the next 40 years, long term. Because a public utility is not a private enterprise that can just decide to liquidate and walk away. We're in it for the long haul. And so this is a chart that I try to use to communicate some of the important factors there. So the blue column there, you can see it stretches to 12.5 million. That is the total cost of all the assets, the components that I believe are involved in your water utility. And here's that list. So you can see, I'll go from you got the air conditioner, scalant pumps, backwash blowers, pumps, check valves, caustic, chemical room, chlorine, clear well, all these things. And so I have this list of all these assets, when they were installed, estimated useful life, and estimated cost of replacement. And so I can annualize the cost to replace each of those assets and come up with an escrow amount. How much money should we be setting aside each year to be on track for when each of these unique assets will reach maturity, will run out of useful life and need replaced? And so the amount that is needed to do that is significant. It's $250,000 because you have different assets that have a 20-year useful life. You have other assets that have 10-year, and some that, like your water mains, we're hoping to get 100 years out of those. And so by escrowing $250,000 each year, we will have the cash on hand to replace those assets when they come due. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball and don't perfectly know when things are going to reach useful life. Ideally, through predictive preventive maintenance, we'll be able to have some assets stay in service beyond the anticipated useful life.
Well, I'll give you a great example of this. So our current water tower, which is located over at Veterans Field, is 125 years old. So like your home water heater, eventually you got to do something about that, which is why we built this brand new one over here. We also know that the other one, the brown one that everyone knows that's over in Showa and K and Thermal, the industrial park, it has to be painted. So we know within the next 10 years it's going to have to be painted. We also know that that's going to be about $750,000. So these are things that we should be generally planning for.
So,
That's a
okay, so-
capital, that's considered a capital improvement.
So I guess the question, I would have as a water bill person that pays water on a couple different commercials and residential, what does that mean if you don't follow that? So when you say that this is a capital asset, planned from the EPA, does the EPA require you to set back that amount of money? Is it something that the village just elects to say, okay, why don't we just do the most recent ones that are supposed to be set to expire, let's just say, has a lifespan of 5 years? And we'll think about the ones that have a 20 to 30 lifespan. Is there certain ones, I guess, that the EPA is going to say, no, you have to, reserve? I mean, I guess that's the reason why we pay a reserve amount and we pay a capital improvement fee on our water bill each time. So what would be the smart way, I guess, to look at that? Should you look at the ones that are mostly going to expire here recently, or do you look at the ones that are longer term?
The recommendation is to consider them in terms of criticality. And so if it is something that will really severely impact your customers, you want to be particularly proactive on those ones. For the ones that are less critical, it may be okay to run it truly to failure and then replace it. But we want to be very thoughtful about which ones those are, because if we do that with everything, emergency repair costs for those critical assets, the cost goes way up.
As
and
we
there
have
goes the
used,
life cycle
yeah.
cost. It makes it more expensive.
I know them pumps.
Yeah,
Well, and, I think it pays note as well, is that the water treatment plant will probably it'll be 10 years in 2027 it's been in operation.
Yep.
There's no warranties on any of these pumps.
Yeah, so for
So I
councils,
guess-
councils and public benefit, a pump costs $65,000.
Well, I mean, I guess you could show an example.
Yeah,
of
we can
what-
show an example, but generally speaking, things like that. I mean, we replace filters all the time, stuff like that. So it's pretty hard to not get around some of these things when they're coming at you.
I know our water tower's so bad, of course, I'm a historian too. Wildrow Wilson sent him a letter, you got a modern water tower. That was 1921, end of World War I, so it's been a few years. Few years,
Just a
yeah.
few. So to give more of a quick story about how this all pieces together, your water enterprise balance has hovered around $300,000 in recent years. Although in 2024 it fell by $40,000, and then it did shoot up last year because of a transfer in of $774,000 towards the water tower that you just replaced. Those $774,000, that's being revised how it's recorded on the financial statement by the audit that was just performed. So in my summaries here, I've anticipated that revision and reflect it as not being in here. So because
Because it
that
was
money
already used.
It was already used,
it
yeah.
was already used, yes. So those funds are correctly accounted for in this summary. In 2021, the balance was 293. According to that asset management inventory, if we had been escrowing money on schedule, you would have a cash balance of $1.36 million. So we're behind schedule. Our balance currently is $300,000. What does that mean? That practically means that we have pushed more of the utility costs onto future customers instead of defraying the cost over current and future customers. And the way that I try to accomplish that fair share of the cost is in the inventory for the long-lived assets, the ones that last over 20 years, I'm only escrowing 10 to 20% of its replacement cost, because if we tried to prepay or escrow the full replacement cost of all your pipes, it would be so unaffordable for your current customers, and they aren't going to live to receive the full benefit of that pipe that's going to be in service for 100 years.
Yeah, and that's not practical to do. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a situation we wouldn't find ourselves in, reasonably speaking, because it just isn't going to happen.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, I think, as I mentioned with our other water tower, we have to have serious conversations about how to pay for those sorts of things.
So I recommend increasing rates next year 15%. then 10 and 10, and then after that, just 3.5% to keep up with inflation. That will help get the village back on track to that asset management cash on hand benchmark 10 years out. I start by just escrowing around $15,000, really modest, and then about 6 years out, I double that, increase it. You have some debt falling off then from earlier projects, and it increases there, and then you'll be on track to equitably spread out that cost. And then arguably, some of these funds that will be escrowing could be used to replace some water lines, reduce that non-revenue water, and make the enterprise even more solvent. So that's really all I have. I'm ready to take any questions or comments.
I have a question, please. So by going by your recommendation of 15, 10, and 3.5, that will get us back on track. That
Yep.
will get us back on track without, I mean, that
15, 10, 10, and then 3.5. Yep.
15, 10, 10, and 3.5, and make us pretty much solvent again.
But I have a question about that. So right now, we have some legislation already in place that increases everyone's water bill every year.
Okay.
So does that go away?
Yes, that's what I'm
Is the cost
recommending.
of living, though?
Well, it's a cost of living or
5%.
5%, whichever is
Higher.
higher. So like this year, I believe the cost of living is 2.5,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So come 2027, it would go up 5% anyway. So we're gonna take that 5% away that would have increased, and you're asking though for you're recommending a 15% increase.
Instead of the 5, yes.
So
And-
the 15% though, would that be just on their, because I feel like, you know, you said part of that, $50 is included in this 7314 you gave us?
Yes.
So you're increasing 15% on that debt service as well. Like you're increasing 15% on everything. But that's your recommendation. Okay, and I know you said you're not here to talk about sewer, but I have a quick question about that. So are we gonna get the same type of recommendation,
Analysis.
probably analysis and recommendation for sewer?
I haven't prepared it yet, but I plan to do that for the village, yes.
Oh, you haven't done it yet?
No.
Okay, so
I've started to organize some of but I was inspecting sewers the other day, and I haven't been able to finish the report.
But
Okay.
the funding's differently, so to say
Yeah.
that if she.
Sewer is way different, but
Yeah,
yeah.
so if the cost of sewer, you may not see a 15% increase for sewer.
Or you may.
Or
Yeah,
you
well,
may.
we don't
That's
know
what I'm
yet,
saying,
yeah.
so you really
Right.
don't know.
So it could potentially be, you could recommend a 5% increase for that,
Yeah,
or you could recommend a 15 or a 20, or
Right.
who knows?
it's
Okay.
just whatever the trends of costs have been,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can, if you disagree with some of my assumptions, I'm happy to adjust them to what you think is more reasonable.
I have a question.
See, I'm thinking ahead too of the future inflation. Right now, a person goes to the grocery store right now, what would be a gallon of milk at one time was $2.17. Now that's $3.49. So how we assure what 2030 or 2031 is going to be? You know, basically, we really don't know. It's kind of this forecast like what we have to do then, right?
We do the best we can.
All right. Last year, we had to take money out of our savings account to fund for our budget. If we don't go with your recommendation, we're going to end up doing that again.
Yes,
Okay.
that's very
We,
likely.
we cannot maintain, going forward, taking money out of our savings account to keep funding to meet budget,
Yes, and I'd like to add on to that.
please.
The benefit of escrowing funds, as I'm recommending, is you are far more nimble by having cash on hand to do the environmental report, to do the initial planning and design,
Right.
to be able to fully take advantage of when there are large amounts of grant funds available, like just happened after the pandemic.
Right.
The communities that had resources to mobilize and take advantage of those, They got to improve some of their infrastructure that's going to be in place for the next 40 years.
Right.
Those who didn't have cash on hand couldn't move quick enough.
I'd also like to state that we have taken a general position that we're not borrowing money in the village anymore.
Should not.
So we have done a lot of work without borrowing, and that has not filtered down to the ratepayer. I feel very strongly, and have felt strongly for a long time since my service on council, this village has 7 loans and should not be borrowing any more money. And so, unfortunately, previous folks decided that it would be wise to leverage the village, in my opinion, excessively. And so that has come back to pay us, or come back to roost. So it's come home. You're paying it in rates today. So there's no two bits about it. And so my thought is we should avoid borrowing if at all possible. And the simplest thing is to simply start a savings account and keep putting money into it.
You know, me and Ben talked, quite frequently about, the calculations and, the bare minimum. And he had said, why did you build a water plant like this? I wish it could be where here's my receipt, go ahead and take it back, here's my refund.
It's a very sophisticated plant.
It is a very sophisticated plant.
It's a space shuttle.
compared
I mean,
to-
I don't know what to tell you. It's a space shuttle. It's one of the best in the state of Ohio.
And unfortunately,
Way too big.
sort of what you said before is that we are paying for something that's expected but is not there at this point. So maybe the intention of council at the time, when they wanted to build the water plant, is that, it's gonna seek growth. But what, you have said in a couple slides here is that we're paying for it because it's not at full capacity. We're paying for it now when it's not at its full capacity.
And our ratepayers are paying a debt service fee.
Yes.
Let's just be candid. I mean, we borrowed to do that. And so,
They had
here's
this
where we are.
wild dream, basically, that we was
So,
gonna expand.
I guess the other part of this, and hopefully you're gonna touch on this, is, obviously, the only way to do this is to share cost across the border here, right?
Across generations,
Yeah, generations, across growth, as subdivisions. What other, as we talked about, and, I'll just say it, is, how do you gain additional revenues? And a lot of
Yeah.
that conversations have been circled around, okay, well, what about if we sell bulk water?
Okay, thank you. Yes. So there's a second page here that just has some rough figures that Misty helped me put together.
For the public's benefit, it looks like this. It's a single page. It goes this way. If you don't got it, we'll get it to you. There's some at the main table.
So bulk sales were suspended in 2024, so no activity since then. But between 2019 and 2024, there was only a total of $26,000 worth of sales there. And so if you annualize that, that's just over $4,000. So I just want to highlight that, that may or may not be representative, but there's not a ton of money to be made on the bulk sales side to subsidize the homeowners, the commercial, and the industrial. Like, it would be modest income. It could still be a net positive, but I think it's largely a question of, does your staff have the capacity to deliver that, or does it become onerous and take them away from the more primary mission of providing reliable water to your residents and businesses?
So I have a question about that, because that, to me, feels a little bit skewed.
Okay.
By, like, maybe what was fed to you. Like, bulk water, if these are the numbers, but $26,000, annualized, you said, was 4,000. At different times, we talked about getting an automated system that would deliver that, so our employees wouldn't be pulled away from delivering water to everybody else. But, I think when we have tried to open the bulk water sales back up, the pushback has always been, well, we don't know how much it costs to make 1 unit of water.
Sure.
So that's why we hired, you're free, I don't know, you to find out how much it costs to make a unit of water.
Yes. And so there in the gray, I showed the variable costs that I had referenced earlier, $6.33 per 1,000 gallons. That's the average variable cost. If you want to get narrower and say, the marginal cost, the next 1,000 gallons, not on an average basis, but just the extra chlorine and energy, how much does that cost? That's around $2.02 per 1,000 gallons.
So that's,
If we were,
that's after the first 1,000, the next costs less. Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm saying, so I'm treating the variable cost as an average for the 80, let's see, it was,
What the historical data was.
in, let's see, so in order to, so the build volume for 2025 was 35 million gallons, but you produced 94 million gallons. So in order to produce those 94 million gallons, it on average, and based on your sales, it cost $6.33 per 1,000 gallons sold, even though you only sold 35 million, but you had to produce 94 to provide it because there are leaks in your system. You had to flush hydrants. You had to do
So you're
other
saying-
costs of business.
Are you saying for the bulk water only?
No, in
Okay,
general.
In general.
And then the marginal cost that I'm saying there is no regard to non-revenue water, no regard to all the costs of doing business, purely the chlorine and electricity is about $2.02 per thousand.
So how much does it cost to produce one unit of water? Is it $6.33 or is it $8.35? Is it those two combined?
No, there are two ways to think about it, and I just tried to explain that, the difference between those two numbers. So in my opinion, the more representative number is the 633.
Okay.
And so you can see beneath this, if we were to add in, go to the very bottom box there, time for bulk fill. If you were to, I made some assumptions on having a staff person available to fill it. It would be like $8.56 per thousand. So your previously charged price of $13.50, yeah, it covered costs. Is it worth that effort? I don't know. That's a policy decision for you all.
So it covered cost plus another almost $5 per.
Yeah, it's pretty modest
Well,
margin.
It's even more modest if you're not trying to sell it at all, right? So there's none to be made if you don't try to sell it.
I guess based on the numbers that I've seen, I think efforts would be better spent reducing non-revenue water than focusing on selling the bulk water, is my outsider opinion. The other thing I want to draw attention to is the middle box there that says anytime bulk fill. The rough estimate from an engineer previously provided that I received from Courtney was that it'd be $100,000 for the automated equipment that you had mentioned. The debt service for that equipment should be charged to these customers that would bulk fill, not to your residents. And in order to make, the way that would shake out would be, it would cost $40 per 1,000 gallons. And I don't foresee anybody willing to pay that. And so, yeah.
Okay. But if we're ever asked in the future again, it costs $6.33 to make.
On average, 1,000 gallons.
It's just, you know, I wanted to explore some of these ideas like this because instead of immediately thinking about a rate increase for our residents and, I mean, because they get one every single year. They get a 5% increase every single year. And, so instead of another huge rate increase, which I'm a little bit confused, the paper you gave us, but the one we were provided, this one was way higher. Did you revised it?
Yes, the revisions were related to the $774,000 that was still on the financial statement that, as
Was
part of the
already used.
balance, and I needed to
Yeah.
take that out.
Right.
And then the other was honestly just a formula error that I caught as I was doing revisions
Okay.
before today.
Yeah, because this was closer to like 20% every year. Okay.
So if we could find other ways to save money, you're saying that the amount that we would need to increase the bill would lessen.
If we make progress on the non-revenue water, for instance, yes, that would slow down the rate of increases needed. I agree.
Because if you look back on where it says flows, did you guys read what the cost savings would, is if we identified water loss, non-revenue? How much it would save per year?
On which one?
The
I just
second
know it
pa-
off the top of my head because you said
The-
it,
the
45,000.
The financials
Yeah,
right here.
if we're at about 64% non-revenue water, if we drop that down to 40%, if we are successful in reducing that, that would save $45,000 a year right there.
Okay, so I have recently become aware that Mid-Ohio, who currently runs our water plant, could possibly do our billing also. And like, I'm looking at this number and I'm seeing we're spending $84-ish thousand to bill this water plant, or, you know, do the billing, the personal, the, or
Between the
the
personal
personal
services and the
services
contractual
and the
services?
other fixed.
Okay.
That's, if we could look into maybe saving some money there, we could possibly come back with a lower number of increase that we would have to ask the customers for.
Didn't council already vote that down?
Nothing was ever presented.
Oh, I thought it was, okay.
I agree. When you have a larger operation with more customers and you have economies of scale to spread that administrative cost over, in theory, there could be savings there like you're suggesting, but the devil's in the details and they would need to be fleshed out in discussion with Mid-Ohio. I don't have that data.
Yeah, certainly Mid-Ohio is not going to do this for free.
Right.
So this is a net cost of the village either way.
So could we go ahead and get those numbers from Mid-Ohio to see
Sure.
what they would charge us? Do you need a motion for that?
Nope, don't need a motion for that.
Okay, could we get those numbers and find out what they would charge us to handle the billing?
We certainly
Well,
can.
let's try to get a recommendation just so it's on the books. so
Okay,
that
let's
we
go ahead
can't
and do
go
that.
back and say it never
So
was
what is
asked.
So this would be to go ahead and close our local billing and farm it out to Mid-Ohio, is Melanie's suggestion.
No, this is a recommendation just to get a
No,
proposal.
I want to make sure that I understand the scope of a recommendation here. So your proposal is that we should go to Mid-Ohio and ask them to replicate the entirety of the billing function for Mount Sterling, right?
I would like to find out what they would charge us to handle the billing portion
Right?
of this for us, yes.
Yeah, and you wanted a window open here?
A window, like them to have a window?
Yes, or no?
Well, let's just find out what all of our options are. I
Okay,
don't know.
sounds
Let's-
good.
Can I suggest that, like, I mean, you're saying we don't need a motion, you can.
No,
go
I'm
ahead-
willing to do,
You're
then,
saying,
but
well,
Courtney,
know what you think.
Courtney thinks that this should be documented. I agree with
It
that.
should.
Let's do that.
Maybe this should go to water. Again, I know it's already been brought to water once.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason, I don't know. I don't know that this directly relates right now to this. I think, yes, it does relate in the big ballpark of things, but as, you know, I don't know. I think that should be, I think Andy should just get the pros and cons of it and what services are offered and all that. The information you were trying to get, that maybe he should just get that on his own and bring it back to us before we make any type of recommendations like you're implying.
Well,
to
I don't think
get
you're
rid
making a
of.
recommendation. I think she's asking what would be the cost savings if you go to Mid-Ohio. So, I mean, in order for him to go to Mid-Ohio, what would he be
I
asking?
need to know the parameters of what's being asked.
What
So if
are
we
the
want to discuss
parameters?
this at the next water meeting, we can obviously table that and talk about it at water. We are at the top of the hour. We've been,
Well, it is Melanie's.
yeah.
Is,
So we need to make a go, no-go on this thing.
I'm just throwing that out there. It's an option, before I think we need to look at all the options we have. It's our that's what we gotta do. That's what we're up here for. If we can find a way to save money, I don't know why we wouldn't at least pull the numbers and look into it. If we can generate revenue selling bulk water, if it's the tune of $10,000 a year, I think we're doing a disservice to our customers by not selling bulk water.
Okay, so go back to this.
So
one.
we need to go back, yeah. Let's
So
go,
the
let's go do that.
recommendation you're asking is to get a proposal from Mid-Ohio for the cost of the billing.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Yeah, is there a second?
What I feel like is happening here,
We have a motion that's been made, so do we
understand
have a,
that. We
do we have a
also-
second from council, please? Is there,
let's ask-
okay, good deal. Thank you.
I
Discussion.
I would feel more comfortable about this. I mean, I feel like the wrong idea could be being presented here, and you kind of exacerbated it by saying we're gonna eliminate, like, I don't think anyone is talking about trying to get rid of Misty's job at all. Like, if there's a better way to do billing and it's cheaper, that's the numbers you're looking for.
I was laboring under the misimpression then. Okay, so we need to have, we do need to have a vote. We're at the top of the hour, we're running out of time.
Still discussing.
Okay,
I just.
but we do need to move on, so can we please move on? Point's been made, we do need to have a vote. Can we please have a roll call?
Nathan,
Yes.
David,
No.
Becky?
What is my motion? I need to
No,
know.
no,
what the motion is.
it's a
recommendation
recommendation to go to
proposal from
Mid-Ohio and get a
Mid-Ohio.
Just to
proposal.
get the numbers to find out what they would charge us to do it.
Okay, Melanie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
and Joyce?
No.
Okay, motion's passed.
Okay,
I did have a question from a trustee. If Mid-Ohio were to take over, the water, I don't know what that entails or what that means, but would they be absorbing the cost of locating the 60% loss?
no. That's an affirmative no. We still own that. We still have to pay for that.
I think what was suggested, I think it had nothing to do with billing. I think what was suggested by one of the trustees, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, that, and I think this was suggested years ago, that Mid-Ohio just take over the whole,
We're really not in a position to discuss the ownership of the water distribution system in Mount Sterling right now. So is that where we're going with this? Because we are at literally 7:03.
Well,
So-
that was the question of the trustee.
I'm sorry, repeat that. What was the question of the trustee? Which trustee was this? I apologize. To whom shall I be addressing this?
If Mid-Ohio were to take over the whole water system, water, everything for Mount Sterling,
Mhm.
would they absorb the cost in finding the 60% loss?
No.
No.
The end consumer will always pay this. There is an affirmative no. The end consumer will always pay for it. There is no free lunch here. None. We asked them in the very beginning, what's the net benefit? And they could not justify it. Now, it's not to say we don't,
of them like running our whole water.
no, not running, owning. There's a difference.
Okay.
Right,
Now,
right.
if they owned it, though, then would they assume our loans and everything, if they owned it?
You will still be paying for them, right? So they're not assuming anything without, you're not getting a freebie here.
Well, I understand that. I'm just, at one time.
From a legal
we-
perspective,
at
the
one
answer is
time-
sure, they will be assuming your loans, but
one
you will
time
be
we
paying
had-
for them as ratepayers.
Right. At one time, we employed water, what are they called?
Operators.
Operators. We employed water operators. We employed sewer operators. And I guess through, time and effort, we discovered that farming that out to Mid-Ohio was financially a better option. And I think what is being asked here in different things is, the same with the billing, is that a better option? And then maybe this trustee who asked the question.
Sorry, which one is this? I apologize. May I please address the trustee personally? Is it an anonymous trustee? I don't think we have anonymous trustees. Is it a person that I can talk to personally? Because I'd like to know more about where they're coming from and their perspective. And it feels like we're working through intermediaries here, and I would love to understand what this individual's, idea is. I'm just curious.
It was just discussion, and the words came out of Brian Hamilton's mouth.
Okay, cool. Let me talk to Brian, and I'll be happy to reach out to him. Because we've been down this path as a village at least 4 times that I'm aware of.
Well, they're trustees, and maybe they don't know the path that we've been down. and-
That's why I want to reach out and give an
Us.
opportunity to bring them up to speed.
Well,
Yeah.
we'd like to
Well,
be brought up to speed
yeah.
as well.
Cool, we can do that, but this should be probably occurring at a water meeting.
Okay, and I agree, and we're picking and choosing what should be at a water meeting, I guess, but, it's all about water. And I think it's fair if a council member comes and tells you what a trustee asked. I think it's a fair question to at least entertain the question, so.
Well, I completely agree.
Okay.
For the public's benefit, it's now 7:06, and I think our colleagues at RCAP have done a wonderful job presenting, and I'd like to open the floor to any questions from the audience to them, because that's important too. Do you all who have stuck around have questions for RCAP as to their methods or the village or anything they've seen in other villages or things like that? And obviously, we got handouts for you to take stuff home and, mull over and look at and poke at and prod at. Is there any other stuff from the floor you guys want to talk about or see or hear?
But just to be clear, council, obviously, those that are watching and those that are in the audience, there's no recommendation here.
No, we're not
okay,
voting on
made by
anything tonight.
council. So just to be clear, before maybe Facebook gets chattery, is that this is a scientific formula created by RCAP and housing, I think, pretty much everything that even I didn't expect to be included
It's
in
pretty
this.
comprehensive. You can.
It is pretty comprehensive,
yeah.
and Ben did such a great job, so didn't Alexis, have taken a lot of time to do this. And again, there's no recommendation made by council at this time.
I have a question, not for them.
Could you come up to the podium,
Yeah,
please,
and
and state your first and last name?
You got to speak into a microphone, and then you're going to state your first name, last name, and where you live.
Shannon Liff, and I live here in Sterling. I'm actually over at Muirwood Village. We have water meters, obviously, per apartment. You guys were talking about, like, the updated meters. Have apartments been considered for those as well?
Already have, yep.
Okay, but they've not been replaced or anything, just considered?
Oh,
No, they've been
They
replaced.
have been replaced?
So long
Okay.
ago, just to give you a little bit of history, if maybe you haven't lived here for very long, or
Oh.
maybe you haven't followed Village, I think it was under David, I want to say Becky, I think, and maybe Joyce, is that during that time, we went to complexes and apartments because they weren't charged the debt service. And there was a separate ordinance, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say it was you three, that it was voted upon that they had like a master meter. They
Okay.
did not have individual meters,
Okay.
which meant that the village decided that, hey, everybody should share this cost, because like Ben had explained, if you stretch the cost to all consumers, and everybody pays their fair share. Apartment complexes did do that.
Okay.
So I do know that Muirwood was one of them.
Okay, I was just wanting clarification, because you said like the houses and new
Right,
builds and all, I
right,
didn't know if
right.
apartments were in that.
Yeah,
category as well.
everybody's in the mix.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
One quick question. You gave a 5-year projection for the increases, but I believe, and maybe I just wrote down something, you only gave us 4 years' worth. I got a 15, 10, 10, 3.5.
And 3.5 thereafter, just
So
to
the
keep up with inflation.
31 is
Yeah.
3.5. So you're recommending then, instead of the 5 that we had, that 3.5 would cover it probably moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that needs to be revisited. Nothing works on autopilot, but that's a good base policy to not fall too far behind. Yep.
When should we expect this same kind of presentation for sewer?
I can get with your staff to schedule a time, but based on my workload, I would think October or November. Is there any event coming up that would be I should try to?
Well,
Be
with
before?
that, if you expect anything to be considered for 2027, we start working on our budget September. So
I can,
If you're gonna recommend, you know, another 15% increase based on certain things, or if you're gonna request a 2% increase, then, you know, we kind of would need to know that
I'll try to,
before the budget.
that's
It would
good,
have
that's
to be
good feedback.
probably
Yeah.
implemented
I will try to make it happen in September. I'll try to have it for you then.
Thank you very much, by the way.
What was your first name? I'm sorry.
Ben.
Ben, okay.
Be careful, you got a spider flying Friday. You could end up being Spider-Man.
Okay, other questions for our friends at RCAP? Other questions? Okay, I call it at 7:12 here on whatever day today is, Wednesday night, and I'm sorry, is it,
I just have a council question,
okay?
About Courtney's resignation. Are we going to have an emergency council meeting?
We will not
to
be having an
post that
emergency,
position
we will be having an executive session.
Soon?
Yes, we're having a council meeting on Monday.
Well, I realize that, but doesn't she leave on Friday?
Yes?
Okay, I was just hoping
It was it's a 2 week, so just to
Yeah.
be clear, I submitted my resignation. for
Right, I had heard that
Yeah.
through, just through the mill.
Yep.
And I, just wanted, you know, to have plenty of time. That's a hard job probably to fill.
So,
Yeah,
A
we
lot
we
of-
will be having lots of discussions. I'll be bringing to executive session a little more in-depth conversation about potential options and approaches.
Okay. And that's gonna be at the next council meeting?
It will be at the next council meeting. At that, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you, everybody. 7:12.
thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of your help. Thank you, and have a safe drive home.